is a Year 8 English video on Chapter 13 of the novel Once by Morris Gleitzman. Let's have a look at the very opening of Chapter 13. Once I told Zelda a story that made her cry, so I lay her on a sack with her for hours and hours until she fell asleep. Now we have this literary technique, the anaphora, that we've spoken about before. Everything begins with the word once, and usually this summarizes the chapter to come. But this connects to the chapter before. He told Zelda a story and made her cry because the story was a true story. It was exactly what he saw with her parents' death. Now this really links back to the chapter before. It doesn't tell us what's happening in this chapter, but only in a very oblique way. Because come the end of this chapter, chapter 13, we find that Felix begins to recognise that his parents are dead too. At the end of chapter 12, Zelda realised her parents were dead, and now that's what's going to happen in this chapter. So a very oblique way, one that's not straightforward or clear. This does summarise what is about to happen in this chapter. Now, Barney and Felix leave the cellar, and they go in search of water. As they're about to leave their cellar, they're overhearing some people talk on the road. I don't know exactly, he said. This is a Jewish man who's walking down the road as they're behind the door. The countryside, doesn't matter where. For each day's work we get a loaf of bread and sausage and marmalade. That's all that matters. A man with a loud voice said, "Please," he's saying, "which is it? Russia, Romania, Hungary? You must know where we're going." He's talking to a Nazi soldier. The Nazi says, "The countryside. Beautiful, much food, easy work." So we overhear that there's another setting. The Jews are being moved from the ghetto to the countryside. On page 118, we find Felix saying, "I'm going to find them," that's his parents. "I'm going to live in the countryside with them." Barney gave a big, painful sigh. "There is no countryside," he said quietly. "The Nazis aren't taking anyone to the countryside. They're taking Jews away to kill them." Here we have finally Felix confronted with the truth. It's not Jewish booksellers. It's not people like his parents. It's not people who hate books alone. These are symptoms of a much deeper hatred, anti-Semitism. And during World War II, 6 million men, women and children, Jewish men, women and children, were slaughtered by the Nazis. If we turn over the page, we find on page 119. "It's true, Felix," he said. His voice sounds like he's at a funeral. "There are death camps." Map of modern-day Poland. Of course, Germany invaded Poland and the Czech Republic and what is now Slovakia. And all this area, Lithuania, Belarus and Ukraine, was Russia or the Soviet Union. Poland was annexed, taken over by Germany. And here we see Warsaw, the capital of Poland, and we see the death camps. Here are the death camps and where they're located. Notice how they're all a long way from Germany, and so Jews were trained in to be slaughtered at these camps. Probably the most famous camp there is in southern Poland is Auschwitz. We then have on the border of the Ukraine and Poland, we have Buchetz. Further north, Sobibor, and the camp that was closest to Warsaw, Treblinka. Probably a good idea to have a look at the death camps quickly before we move on. I'm going to read from Paul Johnson's great book, The History of the Jews. The 6 big death camps formed the main killing areas, murdering over 2 million at Auschwitz, 1.3 million at Majdanek, 800,000 at Treblinka. The speed with which their gas chambers worked was awesome. Treblinka had 10 of them, each accommodating 200 people at a time. It was Hosse's boast that at Auschwitz, each of his gas chambers could take 2,000. Using Zyklon B gas crystals, the 5 Auschwitz chambers could murder 60,000 men, women and children every 24 hours. Some Jews managed to escape by going underground, becoming U-boats, as they were called. In each case, it meant some connivance and assistance by the non-Jewish Germans. One such was the scholar Hans Herschel, who became a U-boat in February 1942. He moved into the flat of his mistress, the Countess Maria von Malzen, sister-in-law of Field Marshal Walter von Reichenau, an ardent Nazi. She designed him for a box-like bed into which he could climb, with holes drilled for breathing. Each day she put in a fresh glass of water and a cough suppressant. One day she came back to her flat and heard Herschel and another U-boat, Willy Bukoff, singing at the top of their voices, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." This is from Deuteronomy 6:4. It's called the Shema. We discussed it earlier on. To keep resistance to a minimum, the Germans lied at every stage of the process and employed elaborate deceptions. They had postcards printed, which inmates were made to send home, which read, "I am well, I work and am in good health." On the transit to Treblinka, they constructed a dummy station with a ticket office, hand-painted clock and sign reading, "In transit to Bialystok." The death chambers, disguised as shower rooms, had red cross markings on the doors. Sometimes the SS, that's the Gestapo, had all inmate orchestras play as the Jews were marshalled towards the shower room. No Jew was too young to die. All women arriving at the death camps were shaved to the skin, the hair being packed up and sent to Germany. If a breastfed baby was a nuisance during the shaving, a guard would simply smash its head against a wall. A witness at the Nuremberg trials testified, "Only those who saw these things with their own eyes will believe with what delight the Germans performed these operations. How glad they were when they succeeded in killing a child with only 3 or 4 blows. With what satisfaction they pushed the corpse into the mother's arms." The dualism of anti-Semitic violence persisted, with secret scientific killings proceeding along the sudden, spontaneous acts of unspeakable cruelty. Jews died in every kind of way known to depraved humanity. An Italian Jew with a good voice was made to stand on top of a rock already wired with dynamite and then blown to death as he sang Ave Maria. A deputy commandant at Treblinka kept a pack of fierce dogs used to tear Jews apart. That's from Paul Johnson's A History of the Jews.